Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of Agile Dad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand Up. So, without any further ado, let's get started. It's Monday, and it's time for us to kick off our week. So, I thought I'd talk to you about a topic that I found really, really interesting. Someone brought this to my attention. This was just brand new published. This is brand new, hot off the presses. And it talks about, so the subject or the topic is what Bigfoot has in common with Agile transformation. I know what you're thinking. Bigfoot, really? I thought the same thing. I was like, this sounds weird. But then the writer went on to propose this. They said, think about it for a minute. Whether you believe in Bigfoot or not, there are so many people who do. And the vast majority, perhaps all of them, have never even seen Bigfoot, but everybody's heard of Bigfoot. So I think where they're going here is that maybe agile transformations that are successful are like Bigfoot. I don't know. Let's see where they go. It's part of our common culture, and it's used in brands around the world. Conversations and strong opinions about something that people have never actually seen seem to become common. Think about your answer to my question of, do you believe in Bigfoot? Chances are you thought to yourself, no, don't be silly, or of course I believe. But I would be surprised if anybody who said they believed had any real evidence to support their conviction. So they're going on to say that successful agile transformations are a lot like Bigfoot. Interesting, but not quite. I go on to say that I found many, many pockets of successful agile transformations within big companies. So whether you're talking about Disney or Amazon or Walmart or eBay or any of the big companies, I've seen so many pockets. Dell, I mean, I can go on for days. Sonify, 44 of the Fortune 100 companies, we see parts of the organization really embrace Agile and do well with it. Now, does that mean the entire company is Agile? Not necessarily, right? um, you know, I could see their point when they say that there's not a whole company that's end to end. There's not a Google that's end to end, or even a Tesla or a SpaceX that's end to end, wall to wall agile. I get it, but I guess for them, they're asking, for years, what do you consider to be an agile Bigfoot? For years, they talked about Spotify. People talked about what they had heard, how they heard it worked, how wonderful the so-called Spotify model was, all without ever actually seeing how it worked or didn't work in person. I would argue you don't have to be present in person to figure out how something works. I think that sometimes you have to have faith in the model and that you have to press forward based on what you know. And I think that, the fact that you're saying that you need empirical evidence to prove that the theories are true is quite shocking and a little bit ridiculous. It's a little bit off the point. I think that an agile transformation being compared to a Bigfoot sighting is sort of just, how should I put it, inflammatory. It's a good way to get people to talk about it. Worked for me. But it's the sad truth is that that's not true. I feel like every organization has its wins and its losses when it comes to agile. I don't feel like you're ever going to have a real agile Bigfoot, so to speak, where everything works from end to end throughout the entire organization. Small companies, yes. Large companies, not so much. So the trick is you have to really understand why agile organizations or agile transformations fail. Now, they give 4 reasons here, and I tend to agree with these. So the first one is poor organizational alignment. Executives and leaders don't necessarily understand what it means to be agile. They don't understand the alignment or the psychological part that goes behind the changes that need to happen in order for the organization to really embrace agile and see a top-down acceptance. Process exacerbates some of the dysfunction. Executives recognize that they have alignment problems, and they do, right? So it's just alignment. Sometimes it's being of an open mindset versus in a growth mindset versus a closed mindset or shutdown mindset. You can't have a stale mindset and do this. It requires you to think differently and think outside of the box. Second, they bring up dependencies between teams and value streams. This is a huge one. One of the things I've been talking a lot about is how we can address dependencies from a product ownership perspective before they become dependencies and align the work in such a way that teams can swarm to it. And I think that if we address these issues, dependencies are what kills agility. They're agility giants. They kill everything. And if you're unable to remove the dependencies, you're going to find that it's harder and it's going to take a lot longer to get any kind of gain from your transformation plan. There's always the famous internal resistance to change. The good news is I'm seeing this start to go away, especially with remote settings, right? In many cases, leaders tend to lend their support and say you have the support of the leadership team. But the problem is that sometimes it's the execution team that needs to support. And I find that sometimes, even often, scrum masters themselves or project managers get in the way of teams who are trying to do this. So I think really, many, many moons ago, we talked about a bottom up approach or a grassroots effort. I think that we need to revisit that and talk about how internal change is adapted and how people can take on environments of psychological safety and how they can get to the point where they can make those changes. And finally, it says a lack of executive buy-in. To systematically overcome structural, procedural, and cultural barriers, it takes culture shift. You need to remove the impediments, and it requires executive support, dollars, time, et cetera. I agree. But at the same time, I don't think that it's going to cause an entire organization to change just because some executive says, "Beest thou the agile." So I think there's a balance here. So the question is, if agile succeeds inside of organizations, what makes it succeed? Instead of pointing out that there's no agile elephants or agile Bigfoots, as you call them, I think that we need to look at this from a different perspective. I think we need to look at where in the organizations do positive changes happen, and how can these changes be applied outside of technology? I think that's an even bigger question, right? Because what I'm noticing more and more is that organizations who do insurance, finance, marketing, especially entertainment industry, are embracing this more and more. And we're seeing that these changes are really working for them. It's working in sales. It's working outside of technology. So I think that's the area of focus where we need to draw first. And I think that when we do, we'll discover some hints, tips, and tricks that'll help us with that cultural shift necessary in order for the rest of the organization to embrace. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It's a good way to kick off Monday. As always, we encourage you to visit agiledad.com, where you can learn more about this topic or others. And of course, always subscribe to the Agile Dad Daily Stand-Up Podcast. Tell your friends about it. We're growing in subscriptions, and we appreciate that. But we do need more people to listen in order to keep on doing this. So if we can get a whole bunch more people involved, that would be a great help. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.